Awesome.
Oh, yeah, that's new. All right. Hello. Welcome to the Hear About It podcast. I'm Will, and I'm here with Sean Murray and Jono Diner or Diener?
Diener.
Diener, perfect. And these guys are with the Rootless Coffee Company out of Flint, Michigan, and they commission comic book artists for all their artwork. So just to recap, they are coffee roasters out of Flint, Michigan, and they commission work from independent comic book artists. So this podcast is officially too legit to quit, and I'm really happy you guys are doing a debut here. All right, so let's we pretty much plan to start with coffee, go into Flint, talk about Flint, which I'm sure quite a few people are curious about, and then talk about these great comic book artists that you've sort of collected. It's like an elite team of comic book artists. So let's get into it a little bit. So what's your origin story, so to speak? How did you come up with this coffee company idea?
So Jono and I knew each other. I would say we were like basically acquaintances. He worked at one coffee shop, I worked at another coffee shop, and basically like the summer of last year, I was just looking to start something new. And so like through a mutual friend of ours, I reached out to Jono and was like, hey, you're a creative dude. Let's get together and talk. And so we did, and we met outside at a bar in Flint, and like got some food and had conversation. And it was, we both wanted the exact same thing out of a coffee company. Like he would say something, I would say something, and we're just like, oh my gosh, this is like, we want to do something unique and different. And we were on like the exact same page. And, again, for guys that like, we knew each other, we were cool, we were acquaintances, but we weren't like super tight. And then all of a sudden we just like, we're clicking and firing on all fours, and we're in the same exact page. So we just, we decided to go for it, and Rootless was born.
I really kind of like that story, because with sort of comic book creators, there are these like writer artist team ups, and these people just sort of get paired together, and you wind up with the stories you wind up with. So that's very cool. That you guys sort of met quite that way. So you have a few grinds out already in a pretty short period of time. What was sort of the lineup? What was your first blend, and how did you go from there?
The first one, our staple roast, is a damn fine cup of coffee. And one of my favorite moments was Sean and I were sitting down and we were starting to do some like taste testing. And keep in mind, this is like early on where we had this conversation about, what we're tired of? Coffee companies that are so like up their own ass, and all they want to do is like, like you're doing homework to look at a bag, right? Ours is, how do we just like slap you in the face with cool artwork? So Sean was like, no, this is like, it's a damn good cup of coffee. And like, he like said it like full sincerity. And I looked at him and I was like, and I'm like, so pretty much that was that. Like immediately I was like, we need to call this a damn fine cup of coffee, because that would be great. And then both of us binged Twin Peaks, like just to like get that space or whatever. But it started where it's a Brazil Nicaragua roast. So it's a nice blend of both. And we wanted it to be like a light roast diner coffee. So you get like chocolatey and nuttiness of it, but not like to the point where there's some coffee companies where it's just so light that it's just straight up acidic. And we're like, I want to be able to have any of our coffees in a diner or like a coffee shop without being polarizing. So started out with a damn fine cup of coffee. And then our initial launch, we had dark. So our friend Kelly Williams did the artwork for that. and we just said, it's going to be dark, do something like badass, like a crow or something. And he's like, cool. And then that came out. And then for A Damn Fine Cup of Coffee, Craig Horkey, one of my favorite artists, him and I did a few like mini comics back in the day.
Wow.
He, like, I was like, do you like Twin Peaks? And he's like, it's my favorite show. I went, okay, so that's good. I have an idea. And then he did the crazy like, owl Agent Cooper looking guy. And then we had Berry Kiss, which is one of our favorites. It's an Ethiopian that's like very berry, like sweet berry forward.
Wow. Okay, I gotta try that one.
That's probably my favorite. It's like awesome and like pour over and French press. And it's not like tart acidic berry, it's like sweet, which is really nice. So Emily Pearson did the artwork for that. We were actually like working on a pitch together for a second.
Whoa.
And just so people know, so my background is I'm a comic writer. That
Nice.
so we kind of just tied all of that in together. So then after Emily Pearson, then we did Out There, which was our Colombian.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I was like, that was a while back now. Yeah. But my friend Matt Emmons did the artwork for that, and him and I did a comic called Monster Bounty before, and I know he's just awesome at drawing monsters and weird stuff. So I was like,
Monster Brownie, man, you're onto something. Okay.
Yeah. So I was like,
I'll throw up a link for that one, definitely.
So yeah, so the that was our first seasonal roast. So that one ended up selling out, which was great. And then now we have the staple roast, and then it's kind of been expanding since then.
That's really exciting. I really like what you said about the the diner vibe of a coffee. I feel the same. And when you get a good cup at a diner at the right time, there's nothing better. And this Berry Kiss sounds great. So Sean, what about you, man? What's some of your artistic sensibility sort of going into these blends? Was there sort of anything that you wanted to do in particular starting this company?
Yeah. So coming from the craft coffee world and the third wave coffee, and just, having dipped my toes in roasting prior to Rootless and working in coffee shops, and like my background goes outside of like, I'm a musician, but I never really did that professionally. But like I worked in craft breweries and bars for basically my whole life, and I used to brew beer and all of that stuff. So what I found really lacking in the coffee industry and what the beer industry has done so well with their products is that it's not just, you don't just get this IPA that's explained to you. They tell a story through their packaging and through their artwork, and they work with artists. So you can like see something and know like, this is what it's going to taste like. And I felt like the coffee industry had not done a great job with that. Basically very sterile, plain, and like Jono kind of said earlier, like the elevation, the region, and all those things which are important to craft coffee. But that's like a small percentage of people who know what that is. And so what we really wanted to do, and what I really wanted to do, was to give people craft coffee and make it accessible without being off-putting, and without somebody, the classic, you walk into a coffee shop and you're like, I don't know what to order and I don't want to get made fun of, right? It's like that is the stigma with craft coffee. And so what we wanted to do with Rootless was just completely smash that. So like, part of me cringes a little bit when I say diner coffee, because I know what like bad diner coffee is. But the thing is with like our Damn Fine roast is like, it's an awesome cup of craft coffee. Like you can do it as a pour over, you can do it as a French press, but you can also make it in your Mr. Coffee pot, and it's going to be great. And so we know that now we have all the people, these customers that are like fans of ours, because they're like, oh, all I drank was, whatever was in the cupboard. And now I can't drink anything else other than your coffee because it's fresh. Like we roast to order. And the tasting notes really come out. And when we say chocolatey and nutty, like they're there. And it's just, so it's a really cool experience to take people, the people we're going after who like good coffee, but maybe we're a little afraid of diving into craft coffee and exposing them to it and giving them good stuff. And they're like, wow, now I'm sold. And this is what I love. So it's really just growing the industry as a whole without being like off-putting and pretentious.
Right. That's awesome. So much good stuff there. So many choices of threads to pull on with what you guys are talking about. But you're talking about all these different ways to make coffee, Sean. For you, for a damn fine cup of coffee, what's your brewing process? What's your approach when you're at home and you're like, I'm a coffee guy, I got to make the best coffee ever this morning? How do you do that?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I could speak for Jono and myself both is we are French press guys when it comes to most of our coffees. The only one I would probably differ on is the Berry Kiss. It's great as a French press, but also like a pour over is fantastic. But yeah, I'm just like French press, and like if I'm with my family or whatever and I bring coffee, like we just make it in a coffee pot and it's awesome, you know? So French press is number one for me.
Right on. So Jono, there's a pretty running comic book theme in this stuff, and so you have your toes in that world. So talk about becoming a comic book writer real quick. I just want to hear about that. Curious.
Yeah, definitely. So when I was a kid, I was obsessed with Spawn because of being obsessed with action figures. I loved Marvel, I loved DC, I loved all that stuff, but I never went heavy into the comic specific side of it. Fast forward to being, so I'm most known for being in a band. So I was in a touring band for like over 10 years. And a lot of that was like sleeping on people's floors and playing in dingy venues and then checking out like, what's the thing we could do? We go to coffee shops, we do this. And then some of my friends turned me into comics because they're like, dude, get an iPad and get like, Marvel Unlimited or something. And then I got like obsessed with it. So it goes back to my friend giving me like a stack of like physical comics, and then another friend giving me another stack. And then I started my collection being like, oh, I have like the wisdom of my comic elders now. This is cool. So I read.
Sorry, not to interrupt, really, but isn't that crazy? Like you can literally subscribe to all the Marvel comics that have ever existed online, but you still have to buy some physically.
Yeah, because I know it's up to like the last 6 months or so, and then they probably have, like, ones. So which is great for someone who's like a broke kid in a band. I'd rather spend $10 than $5 per 22-page issue. And then I realized that there's a reason you do that, because there's a full creative team and all that kind of stuff. So in, I think it was 2017, I put together a group of friends, and during the Flint water crisis, because we're from Flint, it was 5 writers, 5 artists. I put them together and we did a Flint water charity comic called Hope, a Comic for Flint. So a publisher called Source Point Press ended up putting it out. So all of our first comic ended up getting like nationally distributed, which is insane. So
wow.
So I kind of just like tripped and fell in the comics from there. And then from there, it was just a bunch of like shorts, anthologies. And then the most recent one I did, it's called The Inevitables. It's Vinny from Less Than Jake, formerly of Less Than Jake, and like a ska super group. They tapped me to write a comic for them and kind of like build the world with them. So that technically just came out recently after like a summer Kickstarter. So yeah, lots of stuff.
Okay, we might have to have you guys back for a part 2. This is totally crazy. I can't even keep track of all this. But so this touring, this is obviously a great segue. Not great. I mean, it's funny you said 2017 as a marker for the Flint water crisis, because from the outside, even from the outside looking in, it feels like this has just been going on forever. Was it only 2017 that it started? Was it 2015?
It started in 2014, and
2014.
Then it's like almost over now. So
wow.
Yeah, wow. There was no like mission accomplished George Bush banner or anything like that.
No.
People kind of forgot and like eased off. So
wow, man. Wow.
Yeah. But they've been doing a lot of like repairs and all that stuff. So
Okay, so real quick, what is this touring band you were in for 10 years? Because that's a success as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it was called the Swellers.
The
So we're
Swellers.
a Flint punk band.
I'm sure my buddy John is gonna be like, you don't know the Swellers, you know, but and Sean, you played music, you said. What's your instrument? What's your drug of choice?
I primarily play guitar and sing.
Right on.
So yeah, I
No, man.
dabble with other. Like I play bass. I can play a little bit of keys. I'm the worst drummer in the world, but I can
Yeah.
do like a straight beat. That's about it.
Yeah.
So
It's worth it. It's always worth it with drums for
yeah.
sure. All right. Let's
He's a
let
Cynic Lixie. You could plug it.
Oh yeah. My project is called Cynic Lixie.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. All the links you guys have, you're very welcome. So, let's get into it. So, talk about an origin story. You started this company in 2020, you said, but before that, there's 6 years of being in Flint with this crisis going on. I mean, how did that feel? What was it like for you guys? You know?
I I came to Flint pretty much after the water crisis was kind of starting to at least from the media perspective, diminish. I moved to Flint in 2017.
Okay.
So I missed a lot of that, but Jono could definitely speak more to that.
Yeah, and to be fully transparent, I've been in a suburb like 10 minutes from downtown Flint. So I
Okay.
personally wasn't affected, but all of our friends and businesses, and I was working downtown during it. So it was one of
Right.
those things where you would constantly hear someone be like, "Oh, is the water good here?" Like all the like tourists, and they would make jokes
Yeah.
about it. I'm like, that's cool that people have a bunch of diseases and lifelong like learning disabilities now. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
funny joke.
And that they're tourists, right? So like, what was? I mean, it's good. At least you had tourism, but
In a negative PR context. So it would be like
yeah.
people who had to travel for work, or it would be like Macklemore came to Flint one time, and I got a tip that he was going to be at like our local venue to show up there because I wrote for a music magazine. So
Wow,
they were
man.
like, "Oh, like yeah, come meet him," and it was like him untelevised or anything, like talking to a bunch of inner city kids about like what they're actually going through. And then I guess like the next night he donated like a ton of money from his Detroit show to like Flint charities and stuff. So there was like a bunch of like wild stuff like that going on. Like Snoop Dogg would like walk down the street and like take photos, and then that's it. And people are like, what? So it's like
Whoa.
not like weird like cameo stuff where people would get like PR like, yeah, I went to Flint, I helped a ton. And then like big picture, it was like, oh, people are like using Flint as a talking point, and that before the thing got resolved. So it was very strange. So
This
my friends and
is crazy.
yeah,
This is yeah, okay. This is kind of a hot potato here, but please continue. Same thoughts.
yeah. So a lot of it was just like, here's this small town that we've known forever, where like no one would go, and then it started kind of like going on the up and up, and we're like, oh, but like businesses are happening and like stuff is happening. This is cool. Then of course the water crisis hits right at the beginning of that, and then everything gets all weird and like big question mark everywhere. Our friends who like lived in the city were like, yeah, the water burns us when it comes out of the faucet, and I have to
Wow.
boil everything. But even if you boil it, it doesn't get all the lead out. So they would have to buy bottled water, and then companies like Nestle would take advantage of Michigan and like make a ton of money just like pumping water from like it's just a bunch of like disaster profiteering and messed up stuff and an awful
I mean, you
government.
were there, so you were
Yeah,
there. If anyone's got a problem, you can suck it because he was there. So
yeah,
yeah, yeah. Wow, man, crazy. Please continue.
yeah. So anyway, I guess in closing, it was just a whole weird thing. And then similar to the pandemic, which again was another like the water crisis was fading, and then of course the pandemic started and just like kicked everyone in the nuts again.
Uh,
So there's this weird like uh things are like feeling better and getting back to normal. Um, but that's why it was like with Sean and I, where we're both kind of like losing our minds, where we're like, we need to do something like proactive. And like weren't very happy with like where are we going? We always wanted ownership. We were like in a band context, we were the band dads and everything we've ever done. So when we started
Right.
working together, we were like, oh, we're the guys that talk about something and then do something about it. Okay.
Right. You're two
So
dads.
Rootless dads. So that's why like Rootless took off so fast, because we were both the proactive guys. And we could both like we'll have our meeting and then both of us do all the things from that meeting, and we're like, oh, we progressed, because we know so many people that like, wouldn't it be cool if, and insert anything, and then they leave it there. And we're like, just do the thing. Like, you have an opportunity, hire someone who could do it, or you try, or whatever, you know? So
Yeah.
we had a bunch of
Yes.
cool stuff like that happen. And I think for us too, like another talking point was, not only do we do like crazy local collaborations where it's like everything from like cookie dough to hard cider to candles. We're working on a bunch of other stuff right now. But as far as like different, we always call like nonprofits, bands, and brands. So like Danhausen, this professional wrestler, he did a coffee with us, and it's like our best selling thing we've ever done.
I just
And
saw that.
he's like a
Yeah.
crazy internet sensation. We've also done coffee for bands like Heart Attack Man. There's like just a bunch of cool things that are always kind of going on. But the way Sean and I operate are like, okay, so how do we keep like a tight operation to make sure that we keep our costs low, but do only what matters and not like any like cosmetic stuff. And then we reach out to these interesting people, or they reach out to us. And then it's just this like gradual growth, but it doesn't slow down. So that's the cool thing. We're actually seeing progress. And as the world is healing, or whatever you want to call it, now things are like, oh, we could do events now. We could ease into how the world used to be.
Yes, that's a great story, and I'm glad that that is the case. It's really cool what you guys have done, obviously, and in quite the scenario as well. So congratulations. I'm still processing some of this inside scoop. So let's talk a bit about you just said you know you were both band dads, you know, and so you know you're kind of both okay at seeing something through, and that you work well together. So I think, you know, in my experience, when when I'm sort of working with someone on that level, the challenge becomes like when do we stop? Like when do we cap this crazy 3 hour, 4 hour, 5 hour conversation and like go to sleep or whatever, like do the rest of the stuff. How do you guys sort of manage really kind of success, I guess?
I think the biggest and most important thing that Jono and I both do, I think kind of naturally is, and it's only because we've seen it take other people down, is you have to put your ego aside for so many things. Like there are times where it's like, hey, we never really, like, we haven't had like any sort of couple fight yet, you know what I mean? Like we just talk stuff out, and we both look at what's best for Rootless, what's best for this project in particular. Like, is it going to, we don't worry so much about like, how's this going to make me look? Like we will, in one instance, we will work with a local church to get them coffee and get them set up. And in the next instance, we will work with a professional wrestler who is pure evil, like it's just because it's, the thing is like, we love working with people. And so having that mindset of like, we want Rootless to be this amazing, cool thing on its own. And it's really starting to become that, is where like things are starting to happen, and like you step back from it and you watch it morph, and you watch this thing like grow on its own and kind of take its own identity and become its own thing that of course you're guiding and moving into where it's moving. But like Rootless is not Sean. Rootless is not Jono. Rootless Coffee is its own thing. And I think that's the key to having success and to growing success. And of course, it's discipline, hard work, long hours, like sleepless nights, worry, all of those things that come with being an entrepreneur. But at the end of the day, it's just like, I love what I do. Jono loves what he does. And we love this company, and we're like super stoked and excited about everything that we get to do. We just don't get hung up in like the meaningless details of like, oh, you know, what, like last night we bought a coffee grinder and I was like, hey, I was like, what color do you think? And John was like, the red one's pretty sick. And I was like, yeah, it is. That's the one we got. You know, that was it. That was you got to make a decision and just do it instead of like, I don't know, how's it that in companies so many times. And you know, so it allows us to be nimble and to move fast and to make decisions, like smart decisions on the fly that will move our company forward versus getting like bogged down in nonsense, basically.
A thing worth noting too is there's cosmetic decisions and there's big picture decisions. Cosmetic decisions are this makes look cool. Big picture decisions are this is an investment that has real value. So getting like, you know, this grinder, getting these things, there's a direct correlation to it affecting something. Working with a local company and giving them like a good cut or great service, people will come back to us and work more. And most importantly, on my end, having been comic writer guy who works with different people, comic artists complain about how it takes forever to get paid. So the second we get the final thing, we're like, money, go. And we send them. And every single time, we've always paid every single person the second it's done. And we have a platform to be able to do that. And everyone is going like, oh, like I've always wanted to do coffee. And we're like, we've always wanted to work with comic artists. So that's cool. You know, so it's like the ultimate, like pat each other on the back kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Sean and I to pull from anything that didn't work before and apply it to a positive version of what we have now. And if something is weird or if there's like a fire, then we put it out. Then we move to the next thing. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, that's so great. Oh man. Yeah, that was so fortunate that you said that. Exactly. If there's a fire, you put it out. Yes, exactly. Wow. Boom. All right. So that's terrific. I think people are gonna be really, I think, you know, one of my closest friends is a comic book artist. He did the first episode of this series, and I think he will be very, very, very pleased to hear what you had to say right there. Man, we got there's so much more we could talk about, but let's get into these comic book artists that you sort of chose. How did you assemble this elite team of comic book artists? You know, like so I guess you've been writing some comics. Uh, I think we might have to like figure out a way to record like a mini version to focus on this Flint comic that you did, and the Less Than Jake comic. Let's have you come back another time for sure. But for now, let's talk about gathering up these comic book artists for your different labels.
Yeah, so I guess the quick version would be Sean and I would taste the coffee, talk about the tasting notes, and we go, okay, what kind of feeling does this evoke? Get that primitive gut feeling and go, okay, now what do I picture from that? And it's everything from a color of a bag, a name of a coffee, and then an artist that can do both of those things. So Kelly Williams does like brutal horror comics, so Dark Maid
Right.
is like awesome 80s neon stuff. So we did our coast roast with her. Matt Evans does monsters, great. We did Out There, and then there's a few that weren't like true comic artists. So for example, Craig Horkey, but he's been doing multimedia like poster art for years, so he made sense for I'm Fine, which was great. And then like moving forward, like anytime we have like, and I know you know one of the things that I can't talk about yet technically, but there's one artist we're talking to, and that specific thing, we just connected a bunch of dots, and we're like, absolutely, it has to be this. And we reached out, and the person was very cool, and the coffee is also going
He
to be
was
very
very cool. Yes, I agree. Yeah. Um,
cool. So
I,
yeah.
I just have to let you know. I mean, people would have to really dig to find this, so hopefully it's not a spoiler. But you know, that comic book artist that you're talking to, he was actually taste testing your blends when I interviewed him.
Oh.
So he name dropped you a little bit, but it's like 10-15 minutes into the talk. So like 20 people know about it. But
Send a cease and desist now.
oh
Yeah.
no, please don't. Please don't. Yeah, wow. Oh man. Yeah, wow, this is a pretty loaded weapon of an interview. You guys just did great. Great stuff. And I can't wait to get a couple bags shipped over here to Connecticut. I subscribed to your newsletter, and you guys have a birthday promo code right now for a discount. Do you mind if I use that code even if it's not my birthday?
Yes, you can use it. I give
Yes.
you permission.
All right.
Don't blurt
Awesome.
it out because it's associated with advertising, but
Hmm.
you can use it and you have my permission.
I did not blurt it, but I did read it. You guys got a cool newsletter along with everything else. Yeah, let's sort of I actually write little promos um for my different episodes. And it takes time, but it's also fun. How do you guys work that out? Do you write them all the time, or do you source other people? How do you handle that?
Um, do you mean as far as like the text and all that?
Oh yeah, like you got the bags, you've got the website, you've got, these newsletters. How are you writing all this script?
So I'm one of my 95 hats I wear as a copywriter. Um, agency. So it's essentially I'm combining my comic writing, my background in journalism, my goofballery, and then like I remember one of the first things was Sean. Every time I bring something to Sean, I'm like, "Is this too stupid?" And he's like, "If you have to ask, it's good." I'm like, "Cool."
Oh, cool. That's a good motto. Love it.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
we're very chill with stuff.
All right. So much gold in such a short amount of time. I'm gonna let you guys go for now. But you can come back whenever you want. Just shoot me an email, and thanks so much for doing this, guys. Good luck out there. And maybe in this new crazy world, I'll find an excuse to get out to Flint, Michigan and say hello. I'm not
Yeah,
Macklemore
great.
famous, but
But you are
all right.
super famous.
Wow, thank you, Jono. That's an incredible compliment.
And on that note, I think we're gonna wrap.
I think we're gonna yeah. Thanks. Bye guys. Nice job.
Thanks.
Rootlesscoffee.com.
Rootless Coffee.